Hey guys, and welcome back to another Hoops Lounge audio podcast edition. This time, another trifecta of Hoops Loungeness. Justin Rowan, Mark Griffin, Phil Boileau here to bring you a little NBA content. On today's podcast, we're talking about the reigning champions, the team that seems to hold the new Superman, the Golden State Warriors. Guys, I'm not sure who wants to kick this off, but this is a team that just seems like they're just running the course. What are they doing right that everyone else is doing wrong, or are they just that stacked?
I mean, right now, in a lot of ways, they are hitting on all cylinders. Like, Steph Curry is performing at a level that I believe is unsustainable, just because in the history of basketball, no one has played at that level, really. Offensively, it's bound to kind of come back down to earth to a certain extent. And another player that's doing that, to me, is Draymond Green. Right now, he's shooting about 44% from the three-point line. He's a career 32% shooter. Typically, guys don't go from Rondo to Ray Allen in a summer, so we have to kind of keep in mind that it is still early in the year, and there is some small sample size theater there. But I mean, last year they were the best offensive and defensive team in the NBA, at least in the regular season. And they're kind of continuing on that trend, so it isn't really surprising to see them blowing teams away. It's a young roster that has more time together and has improved internally. We'll need to see probably about 30 games out of them before we probably see kind of where the hierarchy is within the teams and how many of these trends are legit. But right now, I mean, they're head and shoulders above the competition, at least to me.
Uh,
Yeah, I wanted to mention, and I'm agreeing with what Justin said there. Steph reminds me a bit right now of what Kevin Durant was doing, 2 seasons ago during January, February, where he was just kind of out of his mind and just kind of universal and transcending. Steph just happened to start the season that way. You rarely see a superstar come right out of the start like that, starting gates, and really interesting for me to see that Draymond is actually leading the team in rebounds and assists right now. I don't think that's sustainable at all. I just think they're really playing at a high level without Steve Kerr around, which is insane.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll kind of level out over the next couple of months. Also, got to give a shout out right away to the good people of Paris, an amazing basketball-loving city with so many guys in the NBA. Heartless violence. I really hope that the world becomes a better place from this, because it's just kind of a moment to spare. Thoughts really out for Paris right now.
Mm-hmm.
oh no, absolutely. And one guy in this Golden State team, just to bring back what we're talking about, who's up for some money after this season. Justin, maybe I'll throw it back to you. Describe to us maybe the enigma who gets kind of overshadowed by a lot of these bigger names, who is Harrison Barnes, and perhaps go into his value and what he'll be looking for after this season.
I mean, he's overshadowed, rightfully so, in my opinion. He's one of those players that I think a lot of people still believe he has tremendous upside as a result of him being so highly recruited in high school. He was disappointing in college. And so far in his NBA career, he does a few things really well that makes him fit into the Golden State system. So I'm not completely knocking him, but he can guard multiple positions at a reasonable level, which is a real asset in a Golden State defense where there's a lot of switching. And he can hit open shots, which is important because you're going to get open shots when you're playing with Steph Curry. Outside of that, he doesn't create his own shot well. He's very limited offensively, but kind of with this new collective bargaining agreement, he's someone that's going to be getting a max contract. And I don't think that's something that Golden State has a tremendous amount of interest in. I mean, the Finals MVP was his backup. That's not really an encouraging thing if you're looking in investing long term in him, at least to me.
No, and that makes sense. And another person who's actually up for a contract as well. Mark, we were talking on Twitter before about the center situation there in Golden State, having Andrew Bogut being the guy for a while. Festus Ezeli slowly sneaking his way in. I remember last year in the playoffs when he came in, he was really good, or at least in my eyes. What do you see out of this young guy compared to an Andrew Bogut?
Yeah, I mean, I like to call him Festivus. Just a quick Seinfeld shout out. I mean, I love his shot blocking ability. He's just very energetic all over the court. He's got tremendous length. His shot block on Blake Griffin was just one of the Vine highlights of the week. And he's young and he's learning a lot. I mean, just hearing about his background, graduating from high school at 16 and going to Vanderbilt, I couldn't even get into Vanderbilt. It's a school in Tennessee. It is just for ridiculously smart people, and he excelled there. I just really see this guy as being part of the future for this organization. Bogut's had so many injuries over the years, and he's kind of getting on the wrong side of 30 right now. So I think Ezeli is going to be very much in the plans for the future for the squad.
I completely agree there. I think he's a really good player. Now, Justin, one player we haven't actually mentioned, and he also, because he's a backcourt mate with Steph Curry, sometimes falls victim to the heroics of Mr. Curry. But Klay Thompson averaging 15.2 points, about four rebounds, 2.4 assists in about 30 minutes a game.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just me, or are we seeing, or would we have expected more out of Klay Thompson at this point?
Well, I mean, earlier I did kind of mention that Draymond Green is due for some regression. The reason I'm not concerned for Golden State is I think Klay Thompson is going to start going towards the mean as well. I think his shooting numbers are going to improve. When you look at kind of the combined three-point percentage of their core, Harrison Barnes, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green, it's actually lower than it was last season. So I think whatever regression Green has, we're going to see Klay's shooting get back to where we expect it to be. Overall, I think there was some chance that what we saw last year wasn't necessarily sustainable. He is an explosive player that can do a lot of things offensively, and I mean, when he gets going, he's one of the toughest players to stop. We've seen him have ridiculously large scoring quarters and big games last season. But when you're talking about a guy that doesn't have the best shot creation ability, he's good. He's improved his first step in attacking off the dribble, but he's not someone that can really break down a defense, which means to a certain extent he is a little more reliant on others to create for him. Players like that can go through periods where they're incredibly productive, but we saw even in the playoffs, he was very, very quiet for Golden State in the playoffs. Obviously, they still did go on to win the championship, but with limitations to his game, I think some of the best shooting guard in the league kind of talk that he was involved in was a little bit premature. He's certainly an all-star, but I think expectations did get a little bit too high, at least to your point there.
Yeah, and Mark, when we're talking about Golden State, it's tough to talk about this team, much like with San Antonio Spurs, without bringing up this formidable bench led by Finals MVP Andre Iguodala. So I'll just rail off a couple names for you: Andre Iguodala, Andrew Bogut, who's now on the bench, Barbosa, Murray Spates, Sean Livingston, Jason Thompson, Brandon Rush, and guys like that. Do you want to give like a little bit of insight on what this bench means to this team?
Well, I mean, they just as a second unit, as a collective, they don't leave very many gaps to fill. They know their role. Steve Kerr's really assembled a great crew. They've got great chemistry. I mean, guys like Sean Livingston is just an amazing story of a guy just coming back from major injuries. They've got a lot of leadership on the bench. Iguodala willing to, after being MVP of the finals, to go back to the bench. That's not something a lot of guys would be willing to do. And like you said, we got Bogut on the bench now too. I mean, they just have a lot of really good pieces. They have a great culture in the organization, and I got to mention a couple of quick stats here that'll help kind of tie this together. Right now, they're leading the league in shots taken without a dribble, and they're also leading the league in shots taken with less than 2 seconds after. They've got a very humming system, both on the bench and with the starters. They just fluidly throw the ball. They're very Spursian that way. I just think they really click offensively, and they have a system that, going back to the Mark Jackson days, it's very much evolved, and they know the plan well, and they're just executing like crazy right now as a team.
Absolutely. Now, Now, so we've gone over a bunch of these guys, and they're really hot right now. Obviously, at this point in the season, they're leading the NBA at 10-0, first in the Pacific Division, well, first in the whole NBA. Let's be honest. Now, let's do a little bit of forecasting. I'll give maybe the more at-home one to Mark. So I'll start with Justin. Justin, A, does Draymond Green win Defensive Player of the Year? And B, if you had to crystal ball at the final record of this team for the regular season, what are you looking at, given what we've seen through the first 10 games?
I don't think Draymond Green wins Defensive Player of the Year. He's definitely a worthy candidate. I think Kawhi might end up getting that as once again. I've been legitimately impressed with Kawhi this season. Actually, last year, as good as Kawhi was, I was kind of on the bandwagon that Michael Kidd-Gilchrist deserved it, but obviously he's not even playing this season. If I had to guess on the final record of the Warriors, I think they fall one win shy of 70, which is obviously a historically great season. I predict they get 69 wins.
All right, so 69 wins. That's a pretty impressive total for a team that we haven't seen win totals like that in a while. Now, Mark, I'll give the tougher one for you. Maybe tough, maybe not. Steph Curry's playing out of his mind. Is he going back-to-back with the MVP?
My problem is I really do believe in the law of averages. Golden State was really extremely healthy, maybe the healthiest team out of 30 in the league last year, and I just have this eerie suspicion that one of their stars is going to go down. And whether or not that's Steph, it's going to affect everything that Steph does statistically. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say, no, he does not win MVP. There's going to be a major injury, and they're not going to be as successful as they were last year. The basketball gods, I think, are going to frown a little bit on this organization later in the season.
Don't forget about voter fatigue. I mean, voter fatigue got Derrick Rose.
Yeah, that too.
Poor LeBron James. There should be an asterisk on his player profile with voter fatigue at this point, but that's a whole. I
still think Dwight deserved it.
All right, so this has been the Golden State Warriors audio podcast here at hoopslounge.com with Sporting Phil, myself, Justin Rowan, and Mark Griffin.